Dynamic data masking, or DDM, limits exposure to sensitive data by masking it for unauthorized users, while the data in the database remains unchanged. Let's start with an overview of DDM, followed by a demonstration of how to enable, configure, and activate it. DDM facilitates the creation of new roles and their assignments to authorized database users. User-to-role mapping, also known as role grants, determines the access privileges of users to sensitive information. To assign a field identifier to the roles that can view the unmasked data, the security administrator must define an authorization tag. Any authorization tag must begin with #DDM_C_. Note that this prefix is not case sensitive. The security administrator must also define a mask, which is the format string representation set up against the fields in the table. A mask configuration establishes how to hide the data from unauthorized users. The available mask configurations are default, literal, partial, and null. The database stores the underlying data in its original unmasked state. DDM works seamlessly across all clients, including ABL, .NET, Java, App Server, and SQL. If a SQL or ABL query uses a DDM-configured column as part of the query processing, then the query engine can always see the unmasked value. However, when the data is retrieved as a query results set, unauthorized users see the masked version of the data, whereas the authorized users see the original unmasked version of the data. The upcoming demonstration shows you how to enable, configure, and activate DDM for both the authorized admin user and the unauthorized general user. Let's begin by copying the existing sample database into a new database. For this demonstration, we copy the Sports 2020 database into the My Sports database. Now, let's start the database server for My Sports. Then we must enable the DDM feature before configuring and using it. To enable DDM for My Sports, run the pro-util enable DDM command. The next step is to create users in the database if they are not already added. Note that we are generating user records solely for demonstration purposes. OpenEdge provides different and more standard ways to integrate with various user account systems, such as the built-in _OS local authentication system for using operating system local accounts, external user accounts accessed by an ABL authentication callback, and the OpenEdge authentication gateway. Here's the example ABL code that you can use to create admin user. This user has the authorization to view data in DDM-configured fields. Let's save the code as create-admin-user.p and execute it. Admin user is created successfully. Similarly, this example ABL code creates general user, who does not have the authorization to view data in DDM-configured fields. Again, let's save the code as create-general-user.p and execute it. Notice this login screen appears. Because admin user is the first non-blank user for the My Sports database, the blank user no longer has security administrator rights for any connections to the database. Therefore, after running the code for creating general user, we must log in with the admin user credentials. General user is created successfully. The next step is to grant the security administrator privileges to the currently logged in user. This step is optional, but recommended. Any user with access to pro-util and the database can enable DDM, which adds the new built-in _sys.ddm.admin role for the DDM administrator. However, in the absence of a DDM administrator, either the ABL security administrator or the SQL DBA acts as a DDM administrator. They are granted this permission during initial configuration for convenience and protection against losing all DDM administrators. Here's an example ABL code that grants security administrator privileges to the currently logged in user. Let's save the code as secadmin.p and execute it. As you can see, the admin user has been granted the security administrator privileges. Now, to determine user privileges for accessing the mask data, we will create a new DDM role for database users. This example ABL code creates a new role called payroll, which regulates the privileges granted to users for viewing unmasked data. Let's save the code as addRole.p and execute it. Payroll is successfully created as a new role. Further, we create an authorization tag and associate it with the role created in the previous step. This example ABL code associates the hashtag DDM_C_contact_info authorization tag with the payroll role. Let's save this code as setAuthTagRole.p and execute it. Payroll is now successfully associated to the authorization tag. Next, we grant the user-defined DDM roles to authorized users. This example code grants the payroll role to admin user. Note that this code is compatible with OpenEdge release 12.8.4 and later. But running this code with earlier versions from OpenEdge 12.8 through 12.83 will produce errors. Let's save the code as grantrole.p and execute it. The payroll role is successfully granted to admin user. In the next step, we will add a mask to the field. This mask specifies what a user sees if they are not authorized to view the sensitive data. As stated previously, the types of masks available are default, literal, partial, and null. This example code uses the setDDM-configured method and this authorization tag to configure a default mask for the state field of the customer table. The default mask is provided by the clients. Again, let's save the code as addDefaultMask.p and execute it. The default mask is successfully configured. This example code configures a literal mask for the city field of the customer table. The literal mask configures literal values as masked values based on the data type of the column. In this example code, an unauthorized user will see the word masked instead of the city name. We will save this code as addLiteralMask.p and execute it. The literal mask is successfully configured. This example code configures a partial mask for the phone field of the customer table. Also known as the custom mask, this mask is supported for the character data type only. Save the code as addPartialMask.p and execute it. The partial mask is successfully configured. This example code configures a null mask for the address field of the customer table. The null mask can be used for any data type. Let's save this code as addNullMask.p and execute it. The null mask is successfully configured. Now we will activate DDM to initiate the application of masks on the designated fields. Run the ProUtil activate DDM command to enable DDM for My Sports. In the final steps, we compare the display of DDM configured columns when viewed by admin user and general user. To display the first row of the customer table, which includes the custom, name, address, state, city, postal code, and phone fields, save this example code as findFirstCustomer.p. First, let's execute the code as admin user. We see the original, unmasked version of the data. Now let's execute the code as general user. We can see only the masked version of the data. This concludes our look at how to get started with DDM in the OpenEdge database. To learn more about DDM, visit the Progress Content portal at docs.progress.com.